When I graduated from seminary, I got a tattoo on my arm with the tree of life figure. And then in Greek, the Luke 21:19, by your endurance, you will gain your life. So that's, I think, motivation to me that, this life is a marathon, but if you persevere to the end, hey, you're going to be okay.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. Our topic today is going to be really interesting, especially with all the changes going on in the world of digital, and the fact that while artificial intelligence can get us part of the way, we really need the human element. And Jon Clemence, you bring us that human element in all of your work. You are the owner of Cedar Press Proofreading. You also have a podcast, which is new since last time we spoke. Content Creators Unite. Fantastic. So I welcome you to your Brand Amplified. I'm excited that you're here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back on. I'm excited to have another conversation with you.
Same. Let's talk about your background because, again, for the listeners for this podcast, now I've had Jon on my other podcast, Mediascape, but not everybody listens to both. So you started out getting your BA in Christian ministry. You got your master's in biblical studies, but your career was working at Boeing, at sonar equipment companies. And then now you help people create amazing content. Talk about that journey, because those are sounds like three different whole lives.
Yeah, it is three different whole lives. Yeah, I went to school to be a pastor. That was my goal from the time I was about 15. It's what I wanted to do. So I went to college. I got my degree in ministry. I went to seminary to get a biblical studies degree. And what I learned from that experience is, and sometimes people ask me this, they say, well, if you go to seminary, don't they just give you a job when you graduate? And the answer is no. That is not at all how that works. It may work that way in a Catholic seminary. I don't know. But as a Protestant, that's not how that works. So I ended up with a degree, which I deeply cherish and I'm glad that I got, but didn't end up with a lot of job prospects. So I had to take, the job that I could get, which was in quality management at the Boeing company. So I did that for a number of years. And you may recall, this was pre-COVID. This is, I think, 2019. The 737 MAX had a software problem and several airplanes crashed and a lot of people died. And that was the moment for me where I said, I can't work here anymore. I can't do it. This is a values issue for me. I care about human life. And so I got to go. So I went to a very small sonar company in Bellevue, Washington, near where I live. And that was fine, I guess. I wouldn't say it was my dream job. But then COVID happened, which I know you remember, and I lost my job like so many people did. So rather than go back into the corporate world, which I just was kind of burnt out on, I did try to start a church plant. That's an entirely different discussion. We don't have time to get into today, but that didn't work. So I've found myself diving into this world of editing and writing because it's just a passion of mine. It's something I've always enjoyed and been good at. And finally, one day in early 2021, I said, you know what? I wonder if people would pay me to do this. And it turns out people will pay you to do it.
Amazing.
So that's where we are today.
Yeah. Wow. So, well, you're also a musician. We should say that.
Yes.
So I imagine that you already had a lot of experience writing and that helped you figure out and coalesce around your love of writing.
I think so. You know what? Actually, probably the biggest thing is when you're working towards a ministry degree or active in a church, you tend to get opportunities to speak publicly. And so I have preached so many sermons. I've taught so many Sunday school classes. In seminary, I learned how to give an actual sermon, in a way that's well received and structured. So all of that stuff really helped me with my own writing because I understood some basic aspects of just communication and how to do it in the right way. So I think more than anything, that has helped me to get to where I am. Plus, I've always just kind of been good at languages, just nothing I did just to kind of have that talent. So I think those things kind of combine to help me, grow my business.
Yeah. Well, I know that, we don't have the time to get into all of the backstory, but when you decided to hang your shingle on this, what was that experience like? Because you're going from, well, obviously, ministry, I think, is entrepreneurial, but you're going from also
Yeah.
working in these corporations as an employee to now starting a business that, your family is dependent on you bringing the money in, that you have to figure out not just your skill set, but then what does it mean to start a business? What are the things that you have to do to make it work?
A lot of it comes back to my why. So I am a big proponent of understanding your why and why are you doing these things? Why are you making these decisions when it comes to big life issues? And for me, and this sounds kind of silly perhaps, but honestly, I was so burnt out being in the corporate world, working for bosses who either had, companies either had a different value system than I had, or bosses who were micromanagers or just didn't know what they were doing. And so, I mean, it made me depressed. I'll be honest. I was probably depressed. I probably needed medication, but I didn't get that. I wish I would have. And so for me, the why, every day when I wake up, I say, okay, it's hard to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of faith, a lot of trust, a lot of, risk taking involved. But if I didn't do this, I'd have to go back to work at a cubicle somewhere. And I can't do it, Annika. I cannot do it. So much of what I have been doing is honestly built on the fear of having to go back to, a toxic work environment.
Oh,
And I'll do anything to not have to do that.
yeah. Yeah. Well, so what was it like getting your first client? How did you find them?
I started on a service called Upwork, which is still around. You can, still find jobs on there. And I started with a very most basic job I could do in this field, which is basic proofreading. And I started for $10 an hour, and I was proofreading user reviews for this website that I think reviewed senior care homes. So that was my job. It paid next to nothing. It wasn't very exciting, but you know what? It was a foot in the door. And so they took a chance on me, which is great. And then from there, because I, prided myself on doing good work in a timely fashion, I was able to get that contract. I was able to get another couple contracts. And it started snowballing pretty quickly. I think just because, I was able to provide a quality product in a timely fashion and be professional in all of my interactions, right? Like those are the things that helped me to stand out. So yeah, it all started on Upwork. I was able to grow to a certain extent on there. And then what you'll find is if you go this route is you'll eventually get big enough or you'll want to charge enough money to where you'll need to find clients other ways. And you kind of get tired of Upwork taking their cut, right? Mm-hmm. And so then I was able to transition to some other clients. But yeah, it all started for me on Upwork. And maybe for your listeners, it might be Fiverr or freelancer.com. But, those are great avenues to kind of get your foot in the door.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that because I think sometimes when we've gotten to a certain point in business, we don't want to be humble and take a step back when we're starting a new journey and say, you know what? I have to prove myself and prove my mettle before I can charge what I need to charge to make this a full-time business, right? Or a really viable business. So what you did is you took ego completely out of it and just said, this is what I want to do now. I'm going to take these jobs so that I can start getting reviews. I can start getting customers. I can start getting those testimonials. And then that will lead me to bigger and bigger and better things.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely what I did because I knew enough to know, at the time I was 40 years old. So imagine starting a new career when you're 40 during a pandemic. Like that's what I had to do. So yeah, you have to just sit back and go, okay, if this is going to work, yeah, I just have to do whatever I can do to make it work. And so, yeah, the ego goes out the door. Of course, I'm a parent, so my ego's already
yeah.
I have no more ego to give. But yeah, you just have to start at the bottom sometimes, and it sucks, but it's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah. So what does your life look like now? Like, what does your business look like?
I'm going to say that there are ups and downs. I wish I could say that I'm making $1 million a month and I work 2 hours a day and I have a vacation home at the beach. None of those things is true. But you know what? I stay busy though. I have a number of clients. Most of my clients, I guess I have one main editing client now. I have a couple of writing clients. Writing is nice because it's a bit more creative and it pays more. And then I also have jumped into the podcasting world. I have my own podcasting show, podcast. I also do podcasting for another company. So I've kind of found some different things to occupy my time, and that's good for me because I don't like to do the same thing every day. I like new challenges and waking up going, what am I going to do today? Oh, I've got to write this ad and I have to edit this document and I have to produce this podcast. And a normal person might think that's totally crazy. Why would you do those totally different? But for me, I like that. So it works for me. So depending on the week, it's some weeks are busy, some weeks are a little bit lighter. And when they're lighter, that gives me time to work on marketing or selling or, creating new things to offer. And then when it's busy, then I work with the clients and I get their work done. So I enjoy the flexibility. I enjoy the kind of the craziness of it all. And I really enjoy working from home.
Yeah.
Definitely a homebody.
Yeah. Amazing. And have you grown the team, or is that something you aspire to do?
I have. So a couple years in, this is probably 2023, I started receiving so many requests that I had to start turning them down, which is not a good business strategy. So what I did is I reached out to a couple of people I knew and who I knew wanted to do kind of what I did. And I said, look, I'll make you a deal. I'll find the clients, I'll find the work, you do the work, and we'll split the money. And so I have a team of contractors who I can give work to when I need to. And it just kind of depends on what the work is and who has strengths and what I want to do and what I want to, give away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a pretty big contracting group right now. And I have one of my contractors who specializes in writing. So that's kind of nice to be able to partner with her on that. And then I have a virtual assistant too, which by the way, that's probably one of the few smart things I've ever done is hire a virtual assistant. They're so helpful.
Oh, very much so. I know I feel like I need to add a couple more to my business.
Yeah.
But the help that I do have is just life-saving. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the other team member really who I should mention because I couldn't do it without her is my wife. So not only are we co-business owners, but she's also a graphic designer. So
Cool.
anytime I need a logo or, a website design or, hey, I need you to design this PDF guide that I want to sell on my website, I can give that all to her and she takes care of it. And she's amazing. So really without her, none of this could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. When it comes to your clients, you said you have some core clients. What do you do to get your brand and your name out there to get more business in at this point?
Yeah, I've tried a lot of things and I continue to try a lot of things. So I do have an email list that I've been able to grow. So I definitely send emails out regularly to make sure people remember who I am and also provide value to them because I don't just want to, spam them with things. I want to give them interesting, valuable things. Obviously, I post on LinkedIn all the time because I am looking for businesses to partner with. So I want people to know me on there. But I'll tell you, the best networking tool that I've found to date is podcasting. And I think about it before podcast was a thing. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm super introverted. I do not like crowds. So networking before, in the dark ages, networking was going to the local big building of some kind, arena, whatever, and like shaking hands with 1,000 people. I'm not doing that. I'm just not, that's not something I'm comfortable with. But podcasting has been wonderful because I get to meet amazing people like you and just so many others. And all I do is I have fun discussions with people. I learn about them. They learn about me. And then usually after we're done recording, I just tell them what I do and ask them if they need help. And something that simple has really been a great way to find and work with new clients and partners and just grow my network and grow my business. So like I'm all in on podcasting. I got to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you're preaching to the choir here.
Yeah.
So yeah, the network I have, the opportunities I've received, the partnerships that I'm in discussions, even right now for are in many ways life-changing. So I don't like networking events in real life, but I am an extrovert. So I think I've kind of morphed into an introverted extrovert, right? So if I'm going to speak to people at a thing, I'd rather be on a stage speaking to a large group of people. I don't like the small talk. I like to get right into the meat of things, right? I guess that's why I also love podcasting so much because we're like, all right, let's dive into our topics. Yeah. So, but I do really enjoy, particularly since moving back to LA in 2019, a lot of quiet time, a lot of time by myself, a lot of reflection, a lot of time to be able to be creative or to spend more time with my partner, with my family. So, instead of being out and doing Like that was a lot of my life in Houston, was being out all the time, having to be seen, going to this event, that event. And it just gets to a point where it gets exhausting. And like you, in my 40s, I started over and started a new career. And I almost argue that that's the best time to do that because we know ourselves better. We've been through a lot of other stuff, so we know what we stand for, what we don't. We're willing to speak with our values and walk away from something if it doesn't suit our values and our mindset. Yeah. So I know I'm going off on this whole tangent here based on what you said, but I do think this is the best medium, the best marketing, the best advertising tool that we have at our disposal right now. So what does it look like now when you do work with clients? Because one thing that we hear a lot, and I've seen companies who will automate, you just put in some information and they'll create a whole content strategy for you, including blog posts, and they'll write things up. And some people just want to focus on that. Oh, I use, ChatGPT to write all of my blog posts and SEO and all of my captions for social media, which I think are not the best use cases because I think there's so much more we can pull out of these tools that we have. But I'd love to hear how you overcome those objections and what areas do you see AI versus human content having value?
It is tough, I will be honest. And I do believe that I have lost work to AI. I don't think it's something I can't necessarily quantify it, but it's just, I like, okay, I used to work with that person and then they ghosted me. And now I'm seeing this writing that they're doing that they don't have the capacity to do that themselves. I know they don't. And like, okay, I guess they're using AI. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. But to your point, I think there are problems with using AI to create your content for you. I think you have to go in and give it the personalization, of course, because that's really what the selling point is. People want to connect with you as a person. And to me, there's a struggle that for me that if I were to use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whatever, to whole cloth write my social media posts, for example, and let's say that I trained the tool to write like me, such that it could even fool someone who's reading this to think that I wrote it. I don't like that. We talk about my values, right? Like I'm fooling someone into thinking that it's authentically me. That feels icky to me. I can't do that. So yes, it may save me time and maybe it saves me some cost if I don't have to hire it out or whatever. But I agree with you. I don't think that's the best use case for AI. I think over time, and if this, I don't mean to offend anyone, but I feel like people who go that route, they're okay with sacrificing quality in the name of saving a buck or saving a minute. Like, okay, that's a choice you can make. That's not a choice I'm comfortable making, but you can make that choice. But if you go look on LinkedIn, like just go look on LinkedIn and see what people are saying about AI. There's two camps. There's the people who are AI evangelists and it's amazing and nothing is wrong with it and it's perfect. If you're not using it, you're behind the curve already. And I get tired of those people. And then there are the rest of us who are saying, I don't want to read your AI junk. Like, I'd rather just read what you have to say. Like, can we just do that instead? So yeah, for all those reasons and more, I don't like the idea of using AI for the end result. Now, what I do like using it for is a bunch of back-end stuff, right? I like using it for research. I like using it for helping me organize things. This is not quite the same kind of AI, but I have an AI tool that I use to help me with sound editing for my podcast. So it's not a large language model. That's a different kind of AI. So there's a lot of these tools and systems that are out there that are tremendously helpful and valuable. And you can adopt them and still maintain your own voice and still be an authentic person and still show up and, be relationship focused. So maybe that's a long-winded answer. I don't know. I hope I answered your question, but that's kind of my overall thoughts.
Yeah, I do think there's a third camp, which is I consider myself an AI evangelist, but I'm not using it to write all, my content for my website or that kind of thing. I did just create a digital clone of myself, but it clearly states, so because I'm going to add it to my website so that people can come on and ask questions that I would otherwise they have to find time on my schedule, which is I have 3 jobs and I'm a single mom, so it's a little difficult. And I'm going to school myself. So they have to find time that matches their time to sit and have a conversation with me. I love having those conversations with people, but I also know a lot of questions they can just, if my my digital clone has all of my knowledge base. It has over 2.2 million words that I've put into it. And it's taking time and I have to get the voice a little bit better. But now people could put a message in and ask about personal branding or podcasting or what's it like to be a professor. Now, it might not know all the answers, but it'll know a whole bunch of them and it'll set them on the right path. And they'll have an outline of an action plan of like, okay, here are the things I need to think about when I'm creating my personal brand. And this is all based on classes I've taught, articles I've written, not AI, right? Research
Yeah.
I've done, podcasts I've had. So it's taking the best of the human side of me, but it also clearly states this is a digital avatar that you're speaking to. It is a representative of me. It is not me. And if it gets stumped, it will send me, oh, this is a question I don't know the answer to. How would you answer this? Right. So there's that fine tuning and there's things that I think can be really helpful. I see that being a tool that everybody should have on their websites as entrepreneurs because it doesn't cost a lot, right? To do
Yeah.
that. And it can help save time and then it can help people get a feel for who you are because it is based on you. And then they can schedule time to meet with you, to book you for work.
Yeah, I
So,
like that. First of all, I've never heard of that. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Like that's a new idea that I never heard. But I think the key with what you're doing is being transparent, right? Makes because
yeah,
what I think I'm railing against is people who aren't being transparent.
yeah,
They're using these tools to pretend like they're talking to you. But I think if you say, "Hey, this is a clone, this is an avatar," hey, as long as you're pretty transparent about it, that's just to me, it's like a more interactive FAQ. Like that's amazing. It's just that integrity piece. I think you bring
100%.
to it that that's the difference.
Yeah, I think ethics and integrity is everything when it comes to these. But I wanted to ask you about another question because a lot of writing is for SEO. But what we've also seen, search has changed a lot. You know, we have augmented search, we have artificial search. We now know that Google's numbers are dropping, and we're seeing more people go to Reddit, to Quora, even to all the chatbots on the LLMs to ask questions about brands, about people. So, what is the value of writing in that scenario? And how do you make sure that you're continuing to write human centered information that can show up better and higher quality in these new search methods?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to think about. One of them, I would again go back to the question of what's your why. So why are you writing? So to go back to the podcast example, my podcast doesn't have a ton of subscribers, doesn't have a ton of downloads, but that's not as important to me. I mean, yes, I would love to have 1 million downloads and millions. That would be amazing. But the reality is I'm doing that podcast to meet people in the network. That's the primary goal. So the numbers of downloads don't, while they're important, they're not like the number one thing. And so I think the same thing applies to your writing. Like, why are you writing? And it may not be to get a ton of traffic to your website, or it may be, but you need to know that, I think, about yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe you're writing like I write. So for one reason I write, so I know what I think, because that's how I think. Some people have to talk it out. I have to write it. That's just how I do it. Other people might write because they want to grow a strong community around themselves or their product. And you can make a pretty good living with a very small community of followers. So you don't necessarily have to be on the page one of Google to do
Right.
that, depending on, what you're trying to do. So I think whether or not you even want to worry about SEO, you have to answer that why question first. And then here's what I'll say. I'm not an SEO expert. I'll tell you that right now. There's a lot of people know a lot more than I do. But I will say that I don't know. I don't even know what the percentage is now. Like some enormous percentage of writing on the internet is just completely AI right now.
Yeah.
And so these search engines, Google and all that, they're looking for human written content because they don't want to get in that negative spiral of AI getting trained on AI, getting trained on AI. It's just like, making a
Yep.
photocopy of a photocopy. So if you write something human, they're going to immediately go, oh, this is new information. I'm going to look at this. So that even just the act of writing it yourself may help you in a search result. And as far as SEO goes, you know, the main thing that Google and all these search engines want is they want you to answer questions, solve problems, address needs. So if you can focus in your writing on answering a specific question, solving a specific need, talking about a specific use case for a product, like these are all going to be things that are going to be searched more, and they're more likely to be found. And as far as the AI overviews and stuff go, that's a tricky one. I don't know. I personally don't trust them a whole lot and don't want to see them, but maybe other people are different. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the work that you do, blogs, newsletters, various types of content writing. What other types of content writing are you doing? And why are blogs and newsletters still really important in this day and
Yeah.
age?
I write blogs, I write newsletters, I write newsletter ads for a couple clients, sales email, ads. I do that stuff. I write ebooks. I've even ghostwritten a book recently. That was a fun new project that I got to do. And again, why write a blog? Why write a newsletter? Again, it goes back to your why. What am I trying to do? Am I just trying to get my thoughts on paper? Am I trying to grow my community? Am I trying to get on page 1 of Google? And so the answer to that question is going to depend on your why. But I would say at the end of the day, promoting yourself is never a waste of time. If you don't promote yourself and your business, especially as an entrepreneur, no one's going to do it.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to be humble, and being humble is a wonderful attribute, and I highly recommend it. Except when you own your business, you can't be humble. You have to step back and say, okay, this is for my business. This is for my family. This is to pay my bills. I need to step out and do this. So yeah, I think a blog or a newsletter can be a very valuable source of doing that. And again, it just depends on what are you trying to achieve. So I'd say, first of all, get very clear on that. And then you can decide, how much does SEO matter? How much does being on page 1 of Google matter? Or am I really just trying to, grow a small community, maybe in other ways, maybe in using a LinkedIn and a blog combo or something like that?
Yeah. One of the statistics that you shared with me was that bloggers who update old posts get 270% more results than bloggers who do not. So can you talk about that importance? Because I think a lot of times as business owners who are not as focused on the writing, we might have blog posts on our website and call it one and done. And that's clearly not what this statistic is sharing.
Yeah.
And probably this is something that you also try to impart to your clients.
I do, yeah. So that's true. If you go and revamp, update, edit your old blog post, you will see more views. And the reason for that is because Google prioritizes newer information. Specifically, it's within the past 18 months to 2 years. So that's kind of a good reminder of, whenever you write that blog post, go put a calendar invite to yourself 2 years from then to go and update that post. And just go look, did anybody read it? If so, did they click on any of the links? Did, kind of do some research. Is this worth my time to edit and to update because people are reading it? Or if no one's reading it, which could happen, you could say, well, okay, then I'm either going to delete it because it's useless, or I need to go back and add more value to it to attract more people. And then really, thirdly, what you'll find is if you consistently write over time, you're going to get better. That's a little known secret, by the way. If you practice things, you get better at them. And you'll look at something you wrote 2 years ago, or at least I do, and go, that's terrible. I have to rewrite this. It's not terrible. Okay. It's not, but it was as good as you could do at the time. But you'll go read it again and go, okay, I can do better than this. I can update this. I know more about how to do this now. And again, that's just upping that quality. So you're improving the quality, you're freshening up the data and the date when it was published. And that's going to send that message to Google that this is good content you need to look at.
Yeah. What about newsletters? Because, we have newsletters. I think even last time we spoke a few months ago, I was saying, I'm really bad about consistency. I'm still bad about consistency with my newsletters, but I've also recently learned that LinkedIn newsletters are a really strong play because LinkedIn helps you promote, or they promote your material organically via email and via their platform for free, which is huge for people. That there are only 400 and something thousand newsletters, and there are 1.1 billion plus people on LinkedIn. So there's still a huge opportunity there to get thought leadership out, not just to your current audience, but to, a new audience as well. So what are your thoughts around sending a newsletter to our email lists? How important is that? How important is it to grow a new audience, perhaps via LinkedIn newsletters? Do you use both? Which one should you prioritize based on your experience?
I have a person whom I've never met, but I will call a mentor. And they had a talk that they had on, they put on YouTube, and they talked about your number one problem. That was the title of the talk was as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, this is your number one problem. And the answer to what your number one problem is exposure. Getting in front of people is your biggest problem. And he made the point that the biggest brands in the world, the largest entertainers in the world are not necessarily, they don't necessarily have the best product. This might be sacrilege. I don't mean this in a negative way, but there are probably better singer-songwriters in the world than Taylor Swift, even though she's amazing.
Right.
And you just don't know them because they didn't get the same exposure she got. Again, that's not a diss against her. It's just the reality of how fame works. The same thing is true for us. So you might have an amazing product, but if no one knows it exists, you're not going to make any sales. So that's
Exactly.
the beauty of newsletters, reminding people that you exist and that you have value to provide to them. And here it is, and this is what it looks like. And that doesn't mean everything you do is a sales email, but it might mean, I'm a writer, so I'm going to give you tips on how to write better. That's what I'm going to do most of the time. And then I'm going to throw a sales newsletter in every once in a while,
Nice.
as often as I can get away with it. And as far as whether you should go with LinkedIn or an email newsletter, I'd use both. So everything that goes out on my LinkedIn newsletter ends up in an email newsletter. I just repurpose it, and it usually ends up as a blog post as well. Because again, it's 3 different potential audiences. And so there's no reason to write 3 newsletter articles when I could write 1 and just use it 3 times. So I would say do both. It's not hard to do.
Yeah. And I love that advice. Thank you. And it's all about repurposing content, right? Like this interview right here, my team, we're going to provide you with short videos. We're going to provide you with the full video. We're going to provide you with captions, blog posts. You may or may not use them because you are a writer, right? So you might take them and say, okay, I'm going to rewrite this in my own words, but the images, the quotes, all of that, we could get hundreds of pieces of content out of one interview, which is another big bonus for podcasting, just to create more content and be able to share that little tidbit that you shared maybe just on, I don't know if there's one that you're just sharing on this podcast versus your podcast in other places, but right, it's a new opportunity and it's an opportunity to extend your audience and reach by reaching into my audience. So I think those are all great strategies for content. I want to ask you about your role as an editor. So when you are hired as an editor for a business, are you basically reviewing all of the content they've already written, making them strategic recommendations and maybe an action plan moving forward? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. Most of the editing work I do is just is reviewing items before they're published or sent off to their final home. There's different kinds of editing. That's the editing that we specialize in. And a lot of that can also be things like, asking the client, do you have a style guide? How do you ensure consistency over time? And usually they don't have something like that. So I just create it. It's super easy to do. And I need it anyway. So it's just a kind of a nice little added bonus for them. But really, I needed to make sure I'm doing my job well. So yeah, we just mainly are editing and looking for consistency over time, looking for consistency, whether it's grammatical or tone of voice or feel or whatever it might be. Because, we want to be consistent over time. We want to present the same face, right, every time. Yeah, so that's the main thing. I don't think that I've done a ton of looking back and re-editing what's already been put out there. Because again, a lot of what I do is going to be kind of one use emails or newsletters or whatever. Yeah, so that's the basics. It really tends more towards basic copy editing than necessarily like developmental editing like you think in a book world.
Nice. Yeah. One thing that we see is, not everybody is a native English speaker, but as native English speakers, we can be critical about their content. Sometimes people don't use Grammarly or another tool or even Word, right, to look over and make sure that their syntax, their grammar, their punctuation, the spelling is correct. Why is that really important to think about? And what are some ways that people can get better at their writing versus, there's that side of things and there's the full on AI side where they're using all the emojis and the little asterisks and you can tell that there's no original thought. So where's the happy medium?
Oh, that's a great question. And I am going to dispel one myth I keep seeing on LinkedIn that M dashes are a sign of AI.
Oh,
Not
right.
true. I'm a human being. I use M dashes all the time. I just want to put that out there. Please don't believe that. Uh,
I did just see an article about that.
it
So,
drives me nuts. So you want good grammar in your content because if you have one typo on your website, no one cares. But if you have two, three, four, five, 10, 20, 100, right, it just adds up. And people are going to maybe even subconsciously just read your stuff and go, yeah, there's something not right about this. I'm going to just go somewhere else because I don't trust this. And it could be the bad grammar. And, not everyone is a grammar nut like I am. Not everyone sees all the mistakes like I do. I'm sorry, I just was born with this talent, but it's still important. So what can you do to get better at that? There are a number of things. I mean, first you can read. I mean, reading is just so great at everything. I would say if you're not an avid reader, become one
yeah.
because you're going to learn so much through just reading. So just get familiar with what good written content looks like, and that will help. And that's free. We have libraries, right? You can go check out a book from the library and read. You can also, this is kind of an overlooked one, get a dictionary, like for real, an actual dictionary, and look up words you don't know how to spell.
Hmm.
I'm a professional speller and I have to look up words every single day, right? English is crazy. It's like we don't
Yeah.
have rules, we have suggestions. And so you have to, don't think that like I know all the words. I don't. If I have to look them all up, you're not waving the white flag, just look them up. If you really want to go to town, you can get a copy of Chicago Manual Style and learn all the grammar. That's something maybe that doesn't excite you as much as it does me. And I get it. And I do want to say, if you're in a business and you're like, I want to put a system or a process in place to catch these errors before they go out, you can go to my website, cedarpressproofreading.com, and I have an ebook for sale that will tell you step by step
Nice.
how to put a process in place to find and fix those errors so you're not, corroding your message because of these errors. So again, cedarpressproofreading.com, buy my book, and you can get that resource too. So there's a lot of things you could do. Those are some of them.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. And on your website, you also have a blog self-assessment that
Mm-hmm.
people can do. You have your podcast, you have your blog, and, they can also book a call to learn more
Yep.
about your services. So there's a lot of free content that you're offering to the world. I think that's one of the best drivers as well, though, and indicators of this is your passion. This is something you want everybody to improve upon. So you want them all to be compliance, but you also have places where people can start to get to know you, know your process, get your advice before they can make that decision, perhaps.
Yeah. And it sounds kind of funny to say, but let's go back to my values. If I can read the newsletter or a blog post or an ebook, and I know that I helped it become better and have better tone of voice, fewer mistakes or whatever the case might be, I honestly feel like I made the world a little better place. It might sound stupid or silly, but that's how I feel. And so for me, I just like doing that.
Yeah. One thing that, well, that's something I really appreciate about you. I'll say that. But then I also, looking at your website, you do have a statement about AI, which kudos. I think those are really important for people to look at, whether they're using AI tools or not. Is this business using AI for everything? Is this something I could just do on my own using a
Yeah.
tool? But also, which of those tools is truly safeguarding your information, not training based on your inputs, right? So that's always something I look at when I'm trying to doing the process of discovery with new tools. And you also price per word, which I'm sure is more common in your industry, but it's also something that most industries don't do. So how do you decide on the pricing model for your business and, making sure it's enough because of your expertise, but it's also competitive?
Yeah, I go out and do market research. So I found some resources that they actually did the research for me, I'll be honest. So I'm able to tap in those resources and go, what is the market rate? How do people charge for things? How much are they charging? And then I try to find a rate that is within those boundaries. And then the other way that I would rate or determine my rates is, what am I currently charging? What do I charge in the past? What does it actually look like? So here's the theoretical market rates. What am I actually successfully able to charge? and then making sure those numbers kind of match up and align and are reasonable numbers that show the value I provide and also are high enough that I can, pay my bills and provide for my family.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Well, Jon, we've covered a lot. I really appreciate you coming on, and it's very evident who you are as a person, how you show up for yourself, your family, and your clients, how you bring that foundation of your values and that consistency in your approach. So I really appreciate that. That's something I think is really just ever so more important in this day and age. We've shared your website, different tools people can use. So I'd like to ask you, is there any one last piece of advice that you would offer the audience?
I think the best advice I could give anyone who asked, who maybe wants to start their own business or who wants to grow in their business or just grow as a person, is think about the thing that you're afraid to do and take that as a very strong signal that you need to go do that thing. That's how you're going to grow.
Fantastic. And of course, I always ask, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, family motto, poem, verse, words that keep inspiring you?
You know what? Well, I don't know if I have a favorite one, but I'll give you an example. So when I graduated from seminary, I got a tattoo on my arm with the tree of life figure. And then in Greek, the Luke 21:19, by your endurance, you will gain your life. So that's, I think, motivation to me that, this life is a marathon, but if you persevere to the end, hey, you're going to be okay. So that gives me a lot of faith, a lot of hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I usually don't expand on what people offer, but it's something that I've really seen in my own life is that consistency, endurance, perseverance. You have to keep on going. And that's when you have that, that's when big things start happening, right? You might miss all the little things along the way, but then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, wow, I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love our conversations, and I just really appreciate what you do and the humanness you bring to writing, editing, all the things that we still need the human elements in. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course. And thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it on your favorite platform. Let us know how you feel. Let us know what you think about the episodes, what questions you have that you want answered in future episodes. And I'll be back again with another amazing guest very soon. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbandamplified.com.